Yes, yes.
We are live now. Hello, good evening, friends. This is last presentation of Eco Master classes, and this is regarding diastolic dysfunction and cardiomyopathy, transthoracic echocardiography. Uh, Dr. Amarja doesn't require any introduction, but she is consultant cardiac anesthesiologist at Kamla Nayan Bajaj Hospital, Aurangabad, and she is very passionate about teaching echocardiography and cardiac anesthesia. So, without wasting any time, I will hand over to Dr. Amarja for diastolic dysfunction and cardiomyopathy, which is very important for every anesthetist, even if you are not doing cardiac anesthesia. Dr. Amarja, please.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Hetal Vadera sir, for the nice introduction. And this is the last topic of our Eco Masterclass series. And today we are going to deal with a very, very important topic, that is diastolic dysfunction. And since most of us have to deal with peripartum cardiomyopathies often, that is why we have incorporated the cardiomyopathy topic in this. It will be a very precise presentation on cardiomyopathy, but you will just understand how to diagnose it firstly, and how to know the severity of it and what are the consequences, how to just get a fast how you can just fast diagnose what is happening and why certain complications such as hypotension are occurring in the patient, which are related to cardiomyopathies. Let us get started, and my request to Dr. Hetal sir, by any chance, if my audio is not proper, let me know, and you can call me so that I can change this internet thing, and we can then continue nicely.
Sure, sure, Amarja.
Yes, sir. Let us start with today's eco class, and that is regarding diastolic dysfunction. Now we are always so much into systolic dysfunction that we basically ignore diastolic dysfunction, and it is not that we ignore. Sometimes probably we are ignorant because we don't know the importance, or we don't think that it is like correctable. Most of us think that if it is there, if it is there, we cannot do anything about it. But yes, even though the condition will prevail, there are few things which can be rectified if we diagnose it preoperatively or even say intraoperatively, and that can change our line of management. So why not just know about diastolic dysfunction a bit more? And so let's get started. Very shortly, let me just tell you the phases of diastole, and they are isovolumic relaxation, the rapid filling, diastasis, and atrial contraction. I just want you to remember rapid filling or ejection, that is E, and atrial contraction, that is A. Atrial contraction is the atrial kick. So just remember two things, that is a rapid filling phase and the atrial contraction phase. Yes, that is the E, that is ejection, and the atrial contraction. Now we all know that the major part is the ejection or the rapid filling, ejection part. Now what is this ejection? Where is it occurring? It is from the LA to the LV. Everything is concerned about LV because LV opens into aorta, and the cardiac output finally, in the form of that volume of blood, that is stroke volume, goes from the LV to the aorta and then to the various systems of the body. So when ejection occurs through the LV, the diastole or the systole is related to LV. So whatever blood is coming from LA to LV, that is rapid filling of LV, that is ejection of the blood into the LV by the LA, that is ejection. And atrial contraction is the LA, that is the left atrial contraction. So I think I'm pretty clear. Rapid filling by E wave or ejection of the LA into the LV. So ejection is of LA, and atrial contraction is of also LA, which is atrial kick. Okay. So you just remember these two things as of now. Okay. Now this was about diastole. What is diastolic dysfunction as such? If a ventricle is stiff, non-compliant, It is not getting relaxed properly for the incorporation of that amount of blood volume. Then it cannot be filled at low filling pressures by the LA. LA has to fill it. Yes, but if it is not getting relaxed, if it is very stiff, the normal LA cannot fill it. LA has to do some more work. That is high filling pressures. That is called as high filling pressures. Therefore, in order to allow proper filling of this LV during diastole, the filling pressures have to increase. And when these filling pressures start increasing, then occurs diastolic dysfunction. Now, there are several grades also, and American Society of Echocardiography has determined these grades of diastolic dysfunction based on the presence or absence of elevated LV filling pressures. So, if we get to know about these two concepts, everything will be clear regarding diastolic dysfunction. Now, there are mainly three grades. Okay, like you can say the impaired relaxation. Yes, the name itself. Now, this may sound very difficult or very intricate, but it is not. It is very easy, and I'll try to solve it like very in a easy fashion so that you can just grasp it. Just see, diastolic dysfunction has four grades, but you just take into account as three grades as of now. The grade one is impaired relaxation. The name itself simplifies it, impaired relaxation. Okay, which tells us that only the relaxation is impaired, but the normal feeling pressures are normal. Okay, that is why most of the echo reports may say that diastolic dysfunction grade 1, and then we are not bothered about it. We are like, okay, types. Yes, it is okay types only. We need not bother so much about it. Why? Because the feeling pressures are normal in this. So the grade 1 is impaired relaxation. Very easily we can remember this. Grade 2 is pseudo normalization. What is pseudo normalization? Is it may appear as normal, but it is not. That is grade 2. And grade 3 is restrictive. Restrictive means the diastolic dysfunction has set in. And again, the restrictive has been divided into 3 and 4. That is reversible and irreversible. Irreversible restrictive is the grade 4, which is the severe form of diastolic dysfunction. So the grades are impaired relaxation, pseudo normalization, reversible restrictive, and irreversible restrictive. Now, how do we differentiate between these grades? And how do we come to a diagnosis that yes, this patient is having diastolic dysfunction? There are 6 to 7 parameters. There are few more. I have incorporated only 6 as of now for this today's talk. And the first parameter to say that it is diastolic dysfunction is evaluation of the transmitral flow velocity, mitral annular velocity, LA volume index, tricuspid regurgitation velocity, pulmonary vein flow, and propagation velocity. This may seem very difficult, but it is not. Just the names are this may be new to many of us, but just see the transmitral flow velocity means what? Velocity of the flow of transmitral. Transmitral is the same coming from LA to the LV. So that flow of blood which is coming from LA to the LV, we have to see the velocity of it. It is not at all that difficult. So how do we do that? In the previous talks or the lectures, we have seen that how do we do that? We just put a PWD, that is a pulse wave Doppler across the mitral valve. Yes, and then what comes is something like this. Yeah, can you see this? These are the waveforms. These are the waveforms which come on our screen when we put a PWD on the mitral valve, that is the pulse wave Doppler. Okay, so this transmitral flow velocities gives us insight to the LV filling pressures. What is this E wave? From initially I'm telling that E wave is the ejection, that is the rapid filling or the early filling velocity. A wave is the late diastolic filling velocity or the atrial contraction or the atrial kick. And then we also take the ratio of these two. We take the E wave velocity here. When we see PWD, here is our velocity on the x-axis, and on the y-axis is the time. So on the E wave, we just see the velocity of E wave, that is how this how tall or how big is the E wave velocity, E wave, and what is the corresponding velocity in meters per second on the screen. Okay, so this is E wave. Then it is the A wave we see. We take the ratio of both. Then we even see the duration of this A wave. Then we see the deceleration time. What is deceleration time? Is the how fast it comes down. That is the deceleration time. And lastly, we also see the isovolumic relaxation time, which is the time between the aortic closure and the mitral opening, just when the diastole starts. Yes, so we see the parameters like E wave, A wave, the deceleration time, the isovolumic relaxation time, and the duration of the A wave. So about E and A wave, as I told you, the E wave velocity reflects the LA and LV pressure gradient during early diastole. It reflects LA pressure and the rate of LV relaxation. Changes in this E wave also indicate changes in the filling pressures. What is A wave? A wave is the atrial kick or the velocity of the blood in the late diastole. The ratio of both is also very important. This can also help evaluate diagnostic diastolic dysfunction. The ratio and pattern suggests if the diastolic filling is occurring at a proper time and rate during diastole. In the early stages of diastolic dysfunction, there will be decrease in early rapid filling with an increase in atrial contraction to compensate for the lack of filling in the first phase. Means what? If the ejection is happening properly, then the atrial kick is shorter, or it is not a big A wave. Normally, this E wave, that is ejection, happens, and most of the blood is transferred from the LA to LV during the ejection phase, and the remaining amount of blood goes from the LA by this atrial kick. But when the diastolic dysfunction sets in, what happens is the E wave cannot push most of the blood into the LV because the LV is not compliant. So the remaining blood but has to go into the LV. So the atrial kick has to take more amount of blood into the LV, and therefore A wave is larger. Now you got my point. So when the grade 2 diastolic dysfunction will set in, you may find, or you will find, that the E wave is shorter and the A wave is larger. Okay, so when you have a case of where you suspect cardiomyopathy, or you have diastolic dysfunction patient, or you suspect diastolic dysfunction, then you have to just put a PWD on the mitral valve and get such stress and just see E and A wave. If you find previously that the E wave is bigger than the A wave, it is okay. But if the A wave is bigger than the E wave, then you should know that the atrial kick is taking lot of time, or is taking the major blood into the LV, and therefore atrial kick or atrial contraction is very important in this patient. You cannot afford to lose this atrial contraction in the form of atrial fibrillation or so. Like in atrial fibrillation, what happens? This atrial kick is gone. Okay, so even in tachycardias, even in SVTs, or in atrial fibrillation, you cannot decrease this duration of A wave, or you cannot afford loss of A waves like in atrial fibrillation. So that is very important part, and that is the main physiology. Understanding of physiology is needed. The A wave velocity is reflective of LV pressure gradient during late diastole, as I told, and it is the A tail kick that we have to remember. The A ratio also, I told you the importance of it. The A duration, just now I told you how important is the duration also, and then the deceleration time is also important, because what happens is till the LA and LV pressures equalize, this flow keeps on happening from the LA to LV. Once the pressure equalizes, blood flow stops. We are able to determine the rate of time from peak to zero of the mitral E wave velocity, and this time is influenced by the compliance of the pressures of the LV. That is why this dt is also taken into account. So you see, if this is normal, and then this is the restrictive pattern, if this is normal and grade 1, 2, 3, you see the dt is decreasing. So that is one more method how diastolic dysfunction is diagnosed. Then also one more is the isovolumic relaxation time. It is the duration of ventricular relaxation during first stage of diastole. When relaxation is delayed, that is, the filling pressures are elevated, this causes the timing of the mitral valve to open later. When this happens, the IVRT is increased. Yes, because the mitral valve will open later, so the IVRT will increase. Or if the IVRT may be short when the LA pressure is very much elevated, causing the mitral valve to open early. So the IVRT is inversely proportional to the LA
Hello.
pressure and directly proportional to LV filling pressures. Hello, sir.
Amarja, your voice is getting, yeah, your voice is getting interrupted, but not regularly. Sometimes
Okay, okay. You
there,
want me
there is
to
some issue.
change?
Yeah,
You want me to
yeah,
stop and change?
it will be better.
Better?
Yeah,
Okay, okay.
if you can, if it is faster, then if it is faster,
Yeah,
then you can do it.
yes, yes.
Sorry for interruption. We will resume within
Yeah,
few
done.
seconds.
Yes.
Please stay with.
Done, sir. Done.
Okay, okay. Please go ahead.
Yes. So let us resume isovolumic relaxation time. Now that was all about the mitral flow, or the E and A waves. So that was one method how we diagnose the diastolic dysfunction. Now there is one more method how we diagnose this diastolic dysfunction, and the previous one was with the flow of the blood, right? It was by the blood flow. Now what we are going to evaluate is not the blood flow, but the contraction of the muscles of this LV. Like the mitral annulus is there, the annulus moves. Okay, if this is the annulus, what happens is when the LV contracts, if this joint, my fingers are there, if this is the annulus, what happens is when contraction occurs, you can see the annulus is moving down. You got my point? So this is something. Now also we that also we evaluate. This is the called as a mitral annular velocity. We evaluate the velocity at which this annulus is moving during contraction. Because diastolic dysfunction happens and it cannot relax, uh, uh, or it is stiffened, it the velocity may decrease. So this is done. How it is done? It is done by TDI, that is tissue Doppler imaging. TDI, there is a knob on the machine itself, on which it is written that TDI. What it does is it takes the velocity or the Doppler of the tissue. It doesn't take the velocities of the blood like the PWD or CWD, but it is for the tissues. So that is called as TDI, and it evaluates the lengthening of the mitral annulus. So during systole, the ventricle contracts and twists towards the apex of the apex to eject the blood out of ventricle. Once the diastole begins, the elastic recoil of this ventricle lengthens to original state. That is, on diastole, it comes to its original state. It evaluates the longitudinal motion and velocity of both myocardial relaxation or compliance of the ventricle during diastole. So the longitudinal motion and the velocity we get by this mitral annular velocity by TDI. And the Doppler signal shows the S wave, or called as S prime, E prime, and A prime. E and A are the same early diastolic velocity, A is the late diastolic velocity, and S is the systolic velocity. So E prime corresponds to early rapid filling and A corresponds to atrial contraction. So here in this picture, you can see that same like we put the PWD or CWD, you have to press the TDI knob on the machine and place the cursor on the uh, septal or the lateral annulus. Okay, septal annulus is at the interventricular septum at the mitral valve level. You have to put your put the cursor, or at the lateral. So it is called as lateral velocity or septal velocity. Okay, the average of both is taken when you have to note it down. Okay, so this is the E wave and the A wave and the S. Fine. So these are the E prime, what I was telling just now, E prime, A prime, and the S prime. This is taken from the septal, if you see, and this is taken from the lateral. So there are values which we have to know. That is the normal septal E prime is less than 8 centimeters. 7 also they take 7 or 8 centimeters per second, and lateral E wave velocity is less than 10 centimeters per second. So if you find it less than more than this, then what, that also we will see then. And the average of E by E prime, E is what we got by the transmitral flow, that is the earlier one by the blood flow. So that E by E prime is also seen, and the abnormal cutoff value for this is 14. Okay, so the average E by E prime is calculated using the average value of both the septal and lateral TDI velocities. So these are the values, and values we are going to see it again and again, and these are the values we should be knowing and we should be aware of when we are diagnosing or treating these diastolic dysfunction patients. Then coming to the third parameters, that is the LA volume index. I would just like to mention this, but we usually don't do this. The earlier two methods we do, and the even the TR method also we do. But we should know about this, that the LA, this everything is about LA. So LA enlargement, we should never ever ignore or pay less attention to LA. LA enlargement is a key marker of long-standing elevated left atrial pressures. I have a very beautiful video later on for this LA thing. The volume is indexed to BSA, and there is a strong data that reflects the relation between chamber remodeling to diastolic dysfunction. LA chamber remodeling is very strongly related to diastolic dysfunction, they say. A dilated atrium is an independent predictor of cardiovascular complications such as death, heart failure, atrial fibrillation, or ischemic stroke. It also has prognostic information on the chronicity and degree of diastolic dysfunction. So this is how the LA volume index is done in the 4-chamber or 2-chamber. We are not going into much detail about it because we usually don't practice it routinely. But the other three, yes, we do it practice routinely. And the fourth important is the tricuspid regurgitation velocity. The final echo parameter for evaluating it is the peak TR velocity. More than 2.8 meters per second suggests elevated LA pressures. So this was the pattern of the earlier. The first, what I told you is that a TMF, that is transmitral flow. It is called as TMF, transmitral flow, in which this was normal. In impaired, I told you that the A takes over more, the atrial contraction takes over more. Yes, then is the pseudo normalization. This may appear as if it is a normal, but then it is not. The other parameters also you have to consider in this, and do some Valsalva manuals and all to know actually if it is pseudo normalization pattern, and then the restrictive pattern, and grade 3 A and B. So let us go into some more detail of it, because this is something which we have to know mostly. The TMF, that is the transmitral flow. If you see, the E wave decreases due to impaired relaxation, that is E and A wave is less than 1 for grade 1. Okay, then the E wave increases due to increase in LA pressure. E and A wave may, the ratio may mimic normal. And in third, the E wave increases due to continuous increase in LA pressure. That is, E wave is far more higher than the A wave. And you can see the E wave is, the duration is also very less in this. So the impaired filling pattern is like the E wave is less than 50 centimeters per second. The E by A ratio, this automatically comes, the E by A ratio comes on the screen. When we take the whole, if we trace the E and A, it comes, the E by A ratio comes, and you have to just see, press the knob of knob at E and A, then also it comes. Then the E and A ratio, and the deceleration time, this deceleration time is seen, which is more than 220 milliseconds. And and this indicates that the pressures are normal in impaired filling pattern. Now, when the E by A ratios are more than 0.8 but less than 2, that means the E wave is not double as A. Okay, that is pseudonormal pattern. But the E by A ratio is E by E prime ratio is more than 14. The E prime is decreased, and by Valsalva maneuver, we can see that the E by A is reduced to more than 50. We'll not go into that detail, but we should just know that if you want to really know if it is pseudonormal pattern or a normal pattern, we have to do Valsalva maneuver, and on Valsalva maneuver, it will go to normal, otherwise it will not. And this indicates, if these parameters are there, this indicates that it is increased LA pressure. See, what I was telling is this, in the pseudonormal pattern, how Valsalva maneuver is going to make difference is, now the E and A wave, the ratio is 1.4. You do Valsalva maneuver and the E is reduced and the A is higher. You got it? So E and A wave are reduced. So A wave has taken up more. So this is a real pseudonormal pattern. Restrictive filling. If you see that E and A wave, that is, the E wave is double that of A wave, it is restrictive, that is grade 3 diastolic dysfunction. In this, the dt is reduced, it may be less than 160 milliseconds. The E prime is also decreased. The E by A ratio, E by E prime ratio, E by E prime ratio is more than 14. This indicates severe LV dysfunction. That is, it also tells that the LA pressures are very high. So here the E by A wave is 2.3 and the dt is 94. Even by E and E prime is more than 16 or is 16. So this indicates it is a severe form of diastolic dysfunction, that is restrictive type of diastolic dysfunction. If anyone is interested, I have just quoted this slide in which all the numbers are given. Yes, there sometimes what happens is there is one more wave in between E and A wave. And what is that? That is additional wave that is called as L wave. So you see E and A wave and a small L wave here L wave, or even in the TDI you can see the L wave, E prime, A prime, and the L wave is there. Okay, what does that mean? That means that there is a severe diastolic dysfunction. This wave indicates that the continued pulmonary vein flow is occurring through the LA into the LV even after rapid filling phase. In between the two E and A waves, also flow is occurring. So that indicates there is a diastolic dysfunction. Now that was about the. There are two, three, few more parameters, and this routine study we do not need, but then the diastolic dysfunction topic cannot be complete without mentioning this few. So I had to incorporate these two, three slides just for the completeness of this topic. And this appears very intricate, but it is not that difficult to know that the pulmonary veins, what they do is we have to put again the PWD in the pulmonary veins, and we have to take, and you get something like this. The pattern is something like this: the S wave, D wave, and the A wave. It is called as SDA. Now see, the pulse Doppler is put in the pulmonary vein here. These are the pulmonary veins. So in the pulmonary vein, if you see, what happens is, if you put the pulmonary Doppler, pulsed wave Doppler, that is PWD, in the pulmonary vein, you get something like this: S, D, and A. Now, what is this S, D, and A? S corresponds to the atrial relaxation. So, if this is the pulmonary vein and it is giving blood to the LA, in the LA, when the LA relaxes, that is atrial relaxation is there, it will pour blood in the LA. This pulmonary vein will pour blood in the LA, so you get a S wave. Okay, you can just say only S wave as of now, not the S1 and S2. The S wave occurs. And then what happens is, during the diastole, that is atrial relaxation only, there is one more is the passive filling again occurs of this. First is the active filling, next is the passive filling. So that is the S and D wave. And then what happens is, when this uh, when the mitral valve opens, then again a small fraction of blood is pushed back into the pulmonary veins. It goes back when the atrial contraction occurs. When when atria are relaxed, the blood comes from the pulmonary vein. This gives you S and D wave. Now atria is contracting. When the atria contracts, the blood goes back. Due to this pressure, it goes back into the pulmonary veins. That is the A wave. This wave. So that is why it is a negative wave. Okay. So this S, D, and A wave. So there is significance of this related to diastolic dysfunction, and ratio of this both S and D are taken. If it is less than 40%, that means that elevated LA pressure is there, more than 15. Okay, so this is all related to LA pressures. That is why we have to know this. When the AR velocity, that is the backflow that occurs when the atria contracts, if that velocity is more than 35 centimeters per second, or even the AR duration is more than 30 milliseconds, longer than the mitral wave, if A wave, then the LV end diastolic pressure is greater than 15 mmHg. So that is also one method. There is one more method to know the propagation velocity. This is again the blood flow from the transmitral flow is taken from the LA to LV, and that is seen along with cochlear Doppler, and the propagation velocity, that is the here it is measured, and the slope is actually seen. If the slope is stiff, it is like mild diastolic dysfunction. If it becomes flat, it indicates there is a severe type of diastolic dysfunction. So this is the overall chart of everything that I have been telling now. That is the mitral inflow, then the annular velocities, the pulmonary vein, the SD and the A, the propagation velocity. Okay, so that was all about diastolic dysfunction in detail. And now only few slides on the cardiomyopathy, and more so on the peripartum cardiomyopathy. Peripartum cardiomyopathy is usually is a potentially life-threatening pregnancy-associated disease that typically arises in the peripartum period, and it is marked by LV dysfunction and heart failure. Everybody knows this diagnosis, how to make of peripartum cardiomyopathy, that is development of heart failure towards the end of pregnancy or within 5 months following delivery, absence of any other identifiable cause for the heart failure, and the EF is reduced less than 45%, and the LV may or may not be dilated. This is how we define peripartum cardiomyopathy. Mostly in echocardiography, you will see the systolic function may be reduced. That is, the LV motion is reduced in a global manner. Dilatation of chambers will be there, usually left ventricle. Left ventricular, since it is dilated, its dimensions, end diastolic dimensions will be increased. Normal 36 to 52 they are, and they may be increased. Valvular compromise may be present in the form of MR or TR. Systolic function may be affected, and ejection fraction may be reduced less than 45%, and LV thrombus may also be present in them. So this is a picture of dilated cardiomyopathy, and these are the normal chamber dimensions, and you can see the dimensions. If you can see, they are increased in dilated cardiomyopathies. Peripartum cardiomyopathy is usually dilated cardiomyopathy, and this is one example of it. See the dilatation of this LV. The LV ejection fraction is also reduced, so the systolic function is also affected in this, along with diastolic dysfunction, that is grade 3. This is one more video of peripartum cardiomyopathy. The other cardiomyopathies also, which we should be aware of, in which diastolic dysfunction may be present, is the restrictive cardiomyopathy. The walls of ventricles may be stiff but not necessarily thickened, so that is why we may not be able to diagnose it, because we will not find it dilated or hypertrophic walls. But still, there is something which you should always know about restrictive cardiomyopathy, and this is the diagnosis. This is a spot diagnosis. How is the diagnosis of restrictive cardiomyopathy done? It is the biatrial enlargement. It is not the ventricular enlargement in restrictive cardiomyopathies. Restrictive cardiomyopathies is a spot diagnosis, that it is biatrial enlargement. If you can see this, you will never forget this echo video. And this is the restrictive cardiomyopathy, in which biatrial enlargement is seen. It is characterized by non-dilated left or right ventricle with diastolic dysfunction. It is the increased myocardial stiffness that leads to impaired ventricular feeling. Biventricular chamber size usually normal or near normal until late, and they may give you signs and symptoms of left or right heart failure also. Then the last is the hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy, in which ventricular hypertrophy occurs, and that is why diastolic dysfunction occurs. That is why there is impaired ventricular feeling due to this hypertrophy, and even obstruction to the outflow will be present in HOCM. So I have told you about restrictive cardiomyopathy, the biatrial enlargement. In HOCM, whenever you see the hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy, just see at the interventricular septum or the walls of LV, they will be hypertrophied. In the short axis, if you see, you can see this hypertrophic myocardium. LV myocardium is hypertrophied so much, so that gives you diagnosis of HOCM. Okay, many patients in our practice also, we come across this situations wherein we have to deal with this HOCM patients, and you can just diagnose it if you see so much amount of hypertrophic myocardium of the LV in the short axis of the LV. See, this is a video of HOCM, and you can see the hypertrophic LV. Yes, there is one more very important thing which you should be aware of these patients is, whenever you are dealing with HOCM patients, yes, you may get sudden hypotension in them, and you will not be aware of, I'm doing everything fine, and why is sudden hypertension occurring in this patient? And then if you put your echo probe on the patient's chest, you will realize that there is obstruction to the outflow. What is this obstruction to the outflow? It is called as SAM. It is systolic anterior motion. What is systolic anterior motion? It is this, if you can see my cursor, this is the anterior mitral leaflet of the LV. Because of this hypertrophy of the interventricular septum, it is pushed so much into the LV side, and also this AML goes and touches it during each ventricular contraction. Can you see this? And every time the LV ejects blood into the aorta, it causes anterior motion at the systole. So it is called a systolic anterior motion and causes obstruction to the blood flow, hampering the cardiac output. This is how sometimes HOCM patients may present intraoperatively also. And this is not very uncommon. This happens lot many times. So HOCM patients, whenever you get a echo report preoperatively also and it mentions HOCM, you should see if they have mentioned SAM, that is systolic anterior motion. And if you have echo probe, you yourself see this. So this is also one slide which you should fix in your mind, that oh, this is SAM. So this is again a hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, you can see. And that was all about diastolic dysfunction and cardiomyopathies for today. And thank you so much, Hetal Vadera sir, and everybody for having me here for this series. And thank you. I would like to thank you all for this opportunity, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Amarja, for excellent presentation, and it was a wonderful series of eco master classes. I hope everybody has enjoyed it, and everybody will learn from it and start using eco. In fact, we are planning workshop on echocardiography during TechOn also, so you can prepare a complete presentation before coming to workshop. Then it will be much easier for you when you join the workshop. Thank you again, Amarja. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.